Hello and welcome to Japan Lyric Room. In this program, we explore the lyrics of Japanese songs, delivering clear explanations of their meanings and unique cultural backgrounds.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, everyone.
Please note that while the voices and illustrations in this video are AI generated, the project itself is run by two Japanese creators living in Japan. The script is carefully researched and written by us to provide original explanations.
Right, and today we're looking at a track that is it's incredibly fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. So think about what the sound of absolute devastating heartbreak sounds like. You'd probably instinctively expect a slow, weeping piano or maybe this mournful string section.
Yeah, like a really heavy ballad.
Right. But the song we're exploring today proves that the most profound grief is actually sometimes disguised as this upbeat, blistering guitar track. Today, our lyric explanation is entirely focused on the masterpiece青のすみかby Tatsuya Kitani.
Which translates to Where a Blue Is.
Exactly. And he wrote and performed it, right?
Yeah, Kitani released this track back in July 2023. And it was written specifically as the opening theme for the TV anime Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2.
Ah, for the hidden inventory and Premature Death Arc.
Right. And honestly, it serves as a brilliant case study in musical misdirection. Because, the narrative arc covers two exceptionally powerful characters who are experiencing their irreplaceable blue spring of youth.
It's this pure period they can never, ever return to.
Exactly. And Kitani is a huge fan of the series himself, so he understood this fundamental tragedy so intimately. But instead of crafting a somber, heavy dirge, he paints this inescapable loss using the imagery of a brilliantly piercing blue sky and a relentlessly energetic tempo.
That musical arrangement is so fascinating to me because, the sheer speed of the song is almost deceptive when you first listen to it.
Oh, totally.
Because I know during the production process, he initially considered a slower, much more oppressive arrangement, but then he completely shifted gears into this driving rock rhythm.
Yeah, he realized that making the track sonically heavy would actually weigh down the specific, fleeting emotion he was trying to capture.
Oh, I see.
The fast pace is deeply symbolic. If you listen really carefully beneath the driving guitars, there's actually a hidden, delicate melody woven into the track.
Wait, really? Like what kind of melody?
It's the faint, nostalgic sound of Japanese school chimes.
Oh, wow. I completely missed that.
Yeah. And by burying that innocent sound under this high-speed tempo, the music physically manipulates your physiology to mimic the feeling of time just slipping away. It represents how those happy, irreplaceable days of youth pass by at the speed of light.
Right, like before you can even cognitively process the joy you're experiencing, it's already blown past you.
Exactly.
And the music video brilliantly reinforces that feeling of vastness and then the subsequent isolation. Because Kitani filmed it in the deserts of Dubai.
Which was actually his first overseas shoot, right?
Yeah, it was. And the visual contrast in that video is just striking. You have this endless, pale, dry sand stretching out beneath a massive, vibrant blue sky.
Yeah, it's such a powerful image.
It takes this really intimate, internal feeling of an eternal blue being carved into your heart, and it scales it up to a literal geographical landscape.
Well, and that imagery of the endless sky perfectly mirrors the opening lyric, which sets up the central tragedy of the whole song.
The psychological illusion of eternal youth.
Exactly. Let's look at that first line.
Sure. Cultural nuance. The days of youth that felt infinite, as if they would never come to an end.
So, to really appreciate the weight of this line, we have to look at how the Japanese language utilizes the concept of ao, or blue.
Right, because it's not just a color.
Exactly. In many Western contexts, blue can signify melancholy or maybe calm, but in Japanese culture, ao is deeply symbolic of immaturity, adolescence, and this very specific window of life bursting with limitless possibilities.
It's that fleeting period where absolutely nothing feels frightening.
Because you haven't realized your own limitations yet. You're just full of potential.
So when he sings about Ao no Kisetsu, the season of blue, he isn't referring to a literal summer day with a clear sky. He's talking about the metaphorical prime of their lives.
Yes. And the characters in the story operated under the assumption that this prime would last indefinitely. But Kitani, he pulls the rug out from under the listener with a single, devastating grammatical choice.
Oh, the word Fiona.
Right, meaning it seemed like, or as if. By framing it as a season that seemed like it would continue forever, he injects this immediate premonition of loss. The conditional phrasing forces your chest to tighten because it implies that this brilliance is already in the past tense.
It's a memory, not a current reality.
Exactly.
You know, it's a phenomenal linguistic trick. It really reminds me of that sinking feeling you get on the very last day of summer vacation when you're a kid.
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
Right. For 2 straight months, the summer felt utterly infinite. You didn't even conceptualize the idea of school or the future. But the exact moment you recognize how infinite it felt, that's the exact moment you realize it's ending.
Yeah, the awareness of the eternity only arrives at the precise second it dies.
Exactly.
And that realization of the end rarely arrives as like a sudden cinematic explosion. When we look at how that illusion of eternity actually fractures, we see it starts incredibly subtly.
Yeah.
The distance between two people doesn't usually begin with a screaming match. It begins with a shift in the quiet spaces between them.
Right. And the lyrics capture that subtle shift with such a grounded, almost suffocating image. The next line is cultural nuance, becoming unable to hear the inner turmoil or the unspoken thoughts of the person standing right beside you.
The atmospheric context surrounding this line is just so crucial for understanding its emotional weight.
How so?
Well, just before this, Kitani references Simishigure, which translates to cicada rain.
Oh, right. Anyone who has experienced a Japanese summer knows exactly what that means.
Yeah, the sound of thousands of cicadas singing at once.
Yeah.
It creates this physical, deafening wall of noise that just echoes violently off the sweltering asphalt.
It's an incredibly oppressive environment.
Right. Yet the lyrics suggest that in the past, amidst all this chaotic, blaring noise of the city, these two friends could clearly hear each other's silence.
Wow. So hearing someone's silence straight through deafening noise, that implies a bond so profound that verbal communication was entirely unnecessary.
Exactly. They could read the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in posture, the unsaid anxieties.
But then the tragedy unfolds when that telepathic ability vanishes.
Yes, I can no longer hear your silence. It means the unspoken communication has been definitively severed. As they grow up and their paths begin to diverge, even that quiet, subtle connection is swallowed by the noise of the world.
So the person is still physically standing right there, but their internal emotional landscape has become completely inaccessible. You know, imagine sitting in a ridiculously crowded, loud room with your absolute best friend. Normally, in that scenario, you can communicate an entire conversation across the table with just a glance.
Oh, definitely. You know exactly what they were thinking.
But then one day, you look over at them, and their face is just blank. It's completely unreadable.
Yeah.
The physical distance between you hasn't changed by a single inch, but the emotional distance suddenly feels like miles. You are locked out.
And being locked out of someone's current mind raises a really painful psychological dilemma regarding the past.
What do you mean?
Well, when you can no longer read the inner thoughts of the person closest to you, what happens to the shared history? Does the memory degrade along with the relationship?
And Kitani answers that question with what might be the most brilliant piece of wordplay in the entire track.
Let's hear it.
Cultural nuance. The memories of youth still dwell, deep within, and at the same time, that memory remains clear, without a hint of cloudiness.
This part is just incredible.
It really is, because I know both of these lines end with the exact same pronunciation, Sundeiru. But reading the lyric sheet, the kanji characters used are completely different. How does that visual shift alter the meaning we are hearing?
It's a masterful use of Japanese homophones to layer two distinct agonies on top of one another.
Okay, break that down for me.
So the first Sundeiru uses a kanji that means dwelling or inhabiting. It's a word often used to describe a wild creature taking up permanent residence in a specific place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the memory of their youth hasn't just been filed away in the brain somewhere. It has settled so deeply inside the singer's physical body that it lives there as an inescapable occupant.
Like it's haunting them.
Exactly. And then the second Sundeiru uses a kanji that means clear. It's typically used to describe pure water or completely cloudless sky. It dictates that the memory is completely untouched by turbidity or corruption.
So the memories don't fade at all. They fiercely inhabit the body, and they're preserved in the state of absolute, uncorrupted purity.
Right. Even though the two friends are walking completely different, estranged paths now, The dazzling light of their past hasn't lost a single fraction of its brightness.
It's like having a phantom limb.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like the memory is fiercely attached to your body, haunting you because you can feel it so vividly, and yet it's perfectly preserved in amber, completely untouched by time. The present relationship is ruined, but the past stubbornly refuses to degrade.
And holding on to a perfectly pristine memory while standing in a ruined present creates severe psychological friction.
It really would.
The sheer clarity of that past blue actually becomes a mechanism for suffering, which brings us to the concept of how identity forcefully shifts when a duo is split.
Right, and the lyrics frame this newly separated identity in a very dark, oppressive light. The next phrase is cultural nuance. The fact that I have become a different entity from you grows into an inescapable mental pressure, a curse.
The use of the word noroi, meaning curse, is incredibly potent here.
Especially for this anime.
Exactly. In the context of Jujutsu Kaisen, which literally revolves around sorcerers fighting physical manifestations of curses, this word carries heavy thematic weight.
But Kitani employs it here purely as a psychological metaphor, right?
Yes. During their Blue Spring, the two friends operated as a singular entity. It was always us. The violent act of growing up and facing their disparate destinies severed that union, forcing them to become you and I, two distinct, separate individuals.
So the terrifying loneliness of suddenly being an other to your best friend, that is the curse.
Precisely. And Kitani chooses a very specific visceral verb to describe what this curse is doing. Futote iku, meaning it fattens.
You know, I really want to push back on that specific verb choice for a second, because fattens is such a strangely biological, almost grotesque way to describe sadness.
Right. It's very striking.
Why not just say the curse grows or gets heavier?
What do you think?
Well, the more I analyze it, the more I realize fattens implies consumption.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this loneliness isn't just a static heavy weight you carry around in your backpack. It is an active, living organism. It's feeding on the isolation, it's gorging itself on the passage of time, and it's compounding, just taking up more and more space in your mind every single day until it crowds out everything else.
That is a brilliant observation. And viewing the curse as a living, consuming entity completely changes how the singer relates to the outside world, particularly to the friend who walked away.
Yeah.
Because how do you look at the person whose departure birthed this curse? The emotion is far more complex than just anger. There's a profound, albeit tragic, reverence for the path they chose.
And that reverence is beautifully captured in how the singer addresses the friend directly in the next line. Cultural nuance. To you, who leaves like a flower that blooms brilliantly but falls without ever bearing fruit.
So the linguistic key to understanding this reference is the word Adabana.
What does that mean exactly?
An Adabana is a fruitless flower. It's one that blooms pointlessly, perhaps wildly out of season, and falls without ever producing seeds or yielding a harvest.
On the surface, calling someone's life fruitless might sound a bit dismissive.
It might seem that way, yeah. But in Japanese cultural aesthetics, there's a deep-seated mechanism where tragedy and beauty are almost biologically inseparable to the observer.
Oh, like cherry blossoms.
Yes, exactly. Consider the cultural reverence for the cherry blossom. It's celebrated specifically because it falls at the absolute peak of its beauty, echoing the ancient samurai ethos of a glorious early end rather than a slow, safe decline.
Ah, I see. So by calling the friend an Adabana, the singer is invoking that exact same ethos. This friend has actively decided to reject societal expectations, safety, and the promise of a conventional future to recklessly follow their own dangerous convictions.
Exactly. The friend is blooming in a hostile environment, knowing full well it will yield no conventional success. The farewell given here is woven with profound respect for that fierce independence, coupled with an agonizing sorrow for how unbelievably brief their brilliance will be.
It's the exact feeling of watching a massive firework or a shooting star.
Right.
When someone lives with that kind of reckless intensity, it's a terrifying, dangerous kind of beauty. You know the physics of it, you know it won't last, and you know it's going to burn out and fall. Yet you cannot look away, and you can't help but be completely in awe of the light it casts while it burns.
And standing on the ground, watching someone you care about deeply burn out across the sky generates a violent internal conflict. The human body almost physically cannot contain the paradox of wanting to pull them back down to safety while simultaneously respecting their flight.
That agonizing paradox translates into a literal physical symptom in the lyrics. The phrase is cultural nuance. A complex mix of anger and sadness remains stuck in the throat, unable to be put into words.
Notice how Kitani returns to the concept of the curse here. Noru, meaning words that curse you.
Right.
But we must look past the literal translation of pure hatred. This is a potent distillation of love-hate.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
The singer desperately wants to reject and condemn the friend's self-destructive choices. But simultaneously, they understand the friend's pain so deeply that they want to accept those choices.
So these two opposing forces just crash into each other.
Exactly, at high speed, resulting in total emotional gridlock. Kitani uses the word suka iteru, which means physically stuck or lodged. The emotional complexity is so vast that symbol vocabulary fails entirely, leaving a literal lump in the throat.
It really exposes an incredibly cruel irony about human empathy.
How so?
Well, the more deeply you understand someone, the harder it is to scold them or stop them.
That's very true.
Think about it. If a stranger was walking toward the edge of the dangerous cliff, you could easily just yell, "Stop," and pull them back. But when it's your best friend and you know exactly why they're walking toward the edge, because you understand their logic, their trauma, and their convictions, you can't just dismiss them with a simple command.
Right. Your empathy paralyzes your ability to intervene.
Exactly. So all your protests, your anger, and your desperate love just get lodged silently in your throat. You literally choke on your own understanding.
And choking on that understanding eventually leads to a critical mass.
Yeah.
The human mind can only carry so many unsaid words and perfectly preserved memories before it reaches a breaking point, signaling the ultimate, undeniable conclusion of their youth.
The imagery used to describe this breaking point is just, it forces us to comprehend an impossible scale. The final lyric we're exploring is cultural nuance. Memories and emotions expand to a cosmic scale, but like grains of sand, they slip through one's fingers as one tries to grasp them.
This closing metaphor is an absolute structural masterpiece because it juxtaposes the macro and the micro.
Right.
On the macro level, you have the astronomical scale. Memories and emotions expanding infinitely outward, much like the relentless expansion of a galaxy.
Wow.
And then on the micro level, you have the highly intimate, tactile sensation of your own hand, feeling tiny grains of sand slipping through the narrow gaps between your fingers.
The expanding galaxy and the falling grain of sand happening simultaneously.
Exactly. The mechanism of grief here is the stark realization of powerlessness. The memories have grown infinitely huge and impossibly vast, but the physical reality is that they are utterly unreachable. No matter how tightly you clench your fist to hold on, the sand drops away mercilessly. The harder you try to grasp the expanding universe of the past, the faster it empties from your hands. This crushing realization of loss officially closes the era of their youth.
Let's explore that image of the clenched fist for a moment, because I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. We naturally view that sand slipping through our fingers as a tragedy, right? It's a devastating loss.
Of course.
But what if that slipping sand is actually a necessary biological release?
Oh.
Think about it. If you tightly clench your fists to hold on to every single grain of the past, your hands are completely paralyzed. You can't reach for a door handle, you can't brace yourself for a fall, you can't reach out to grab anything new.
That's a profound way to look at it.
What if the tragedy of letting go of those individual grains of memory, allowing them to fall through the cracks, is the only possible way we can finally open our hands and keep running forward into adulthood?
You know, that reframing of loss as a necessary release brings us completely full circle to the very tempo of the song we analyzed at the beginning.
Ah, the blistering speed of the track.
Right. Ao no Sumika operates as an anthem for every adult who has had to say goodbye to their purest days. We all walk around with words stuck in our throats. We all watch the sand of our memories fall through our fingers. But because that past blue is still clear and dwelling inside us, we don't have to be paralyzed by the grief. The relentless speed of this track isn't just about time slipping away. It represents the sheer strength required to run toward the future while carrying our grief, rather than stopping because of it.
Thank you so much for listening. We feature various Japanese songs and provide detailed explanations on our website. Please check the link in the description to explore more. If you enjoyed this program, please subscribe to our channel and let us know your thoughts or song requests in the comments. See you next time. This was Japan Lyric Room.